Welcome to Untamed Blossoms, the podcast where we celebrate the untamed journey of womanhood. Here, we tell the stories of incredible women who have embraced their authenticity, inspiring others to do the same.
From entrepreneurs to artists, activists to adventurers, we share triumphs, challenges, and the beauty of self-discovery. These are the stories of women blazing their own trails, breaking free, and blooming unapologetically.
Join us to connect, be inspired, and celebrate the power of women's stories. Together, let's rewrite the rules and embrace our wildness.
Welcome to Untamed Blossoms. I'm your host, Amanda Riley.
And I'm Christy. Welcome to the show.
I know it's only been 7 days, but I feel like I haven't seen you in 7 years.
It's been a long time.
You had the plug.
I had the flu. Mm-hmm.
Was gross.
It was. I was pretty sick.
Yeah. And you don't really get sick like that very often.
I don't get sick very often. Nope. So it took me down.
Yeah.
It took me down. But it's fine. I feel like it left as suddenly as it came.
Yeah.
And so just all of a sudden yesterday I was like, and it's mostly gone. I have a little bit of a cough that's left over, but like it came and gone hardcore. So really fast.
Too fast, too furious, one might say.
No. I clearly needed the rest. That's what I told my husband.
Yeah.
So
just chill out.
I spent way too much time watching television and on my phone. My eyes hurt, and said I couldn't do anything else. I was so tired.
Sometimes you just have to work with what you have.
What about you? You've been busy bee.
I don't even know. I know that I should, and if you listen to other episodes, you're thinking, is this bad behavior, Amanda? But it's not. I've been at 100% full speed ahead right now between podcasting things, realtor school, work. Just literally been waking up, gymming, and then doing that until like 9 p.m. at night. Like every night at 9 p.m. I stop no matter what. Mostly because I start at 9 a.m. and I'm like 12 hours is
enough.
Is plenty. And that's after I have already gone to the gym. So I'm just trying to keep routine, keep my head down. I pulled a lot of tarot cards at the beginning of this year, and February has shown up over and over again as boundaries. And that's the main thing I've been focusing on, is not feeling bad for setting boundaries around my time.
Yeah.
By the time this episode airs, it will be March. So I'm excited to
see how that went.
Listen back to this and be like, did I or did I not?
But we're recording in the beginning of February. So
yeah.
You're just getting into February. So yeah, days.
Yeah. And now I see, looking back, reflecting, I'm like, no wonder boundaries came up so often for February, because I didn't know when I pulled them I'd be in school and how much time that would take. And I'm leaving for vacation on Wednesday, and although I'm really excited, that has put a lot of pressure on this last week of getting things done. And
I hate that feeling.
It's the worst, honestly.
Yeah, feeling like you got to hurry up and get everything you possibly can get done. And I feel like you do 2 weeks worth of work before you leave for a week of vacation, and then you have a whole nother week. Somehow taking a week of vacation feels like extra before and after. So
totally. And I'll still be working while I'm on vacation, but I am also limiting my computer time, whether that be school, work, or podcasting, to 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I'll have 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening that I'm allowing myself to work. But other than that, I know I need a rest. Like I'm going to crash and burn otherwise.
Right.
But I do have a goal to be done with school by the end of this month. Funny, when you don't work at a corporate job, there's so many blessings. One of them that is not a blessing is you don't have PTO.
Right.
So you don't work, you don't get paid. And that's not something I can really do right now. But I think putting boundaries on myself, even to say I know it's enticing to want to do this more than 4 hours a day, but that's all I get.
Yeah. Y'all need the sunshine. Yes.
Yeah.
Sink your figgies into the sand. Mm-hmm. Get yourself in the ocean water.
Yeah. Lots of long walks on the beach.
It'll be very, very good for you. Yeah. I'm very jealous, really. That's all I want in my world right now is sunshine.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully
It's 60
March.
degrees here in Ohio today in February, this is when we start having really odd weather, and it can be spring, but where it can be 60 degrees today and tomorrow will be 21.
Yeah, like, it might snow on Thursday.
I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be. Yeah. And so it's really strange, but like I have this little swing in this big tree outside, and I just went out there and laid on the swing outside, and it just take advantage of the time when you get it, when it's slightly warm out in the middle of these
you have to
horrendous months.
Who knows when you'll see it again, honestly.
I know. Crazy.
Well, I'm so excited for our guest today.
I know.
How did you find her?
I just stumbled across her Instagram account. She came up on my feed, and I was just immediately drawn to her. I was immediately drawn to her story, and I'm like, what a bad bitch
Love that.
is, you know? Like, and her name is Kelly Conroy, and she is learning as a mom of two to be a rally car driver.
Wow.
Bought her own rally car, has done all the work on it, learned how to become a mechanic on it, has built it out, and then raced. And so I can't wait to hear her story. And she was terrified. She'd never driven a stick before. So if you don't know about rally cars, I know I didn't. I had to go look it up.
Yeah.
And so they're these older, just certain types of cars. Hers is a BMW, but it's like an 86 or something, like they're vintage cars.
Yeah.
And they're souped up and they're on dirt roads out in the middle of these crazy fields that they've turned into these things. And you're racing on these dirt roads against other people. And it looks wild. And it was terrifying for her. And she did it anyway. And I'm like,
wow.
What a bad bitch. I need to talk to her.
Oh, this is going to be so exciting.
Yeah. And the fact that, similar stories to what we've heard. You're older, you're married, you have kids, and you just totally lose your identity. And this was really her figuring out
coming back to self.
And so I can't wait to hear, where her journey took her and how she landed in rally car driving. But I reached out to her and she was so excited to talk to us. And I'm real excited to talk to her. Her messaging is great on her Instagram page.
So exciting. All right. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the pod.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me here.
Hi.
All the way from California.
Cali.
Can you imagine?
All the way.
I love California.
Have you been?
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. And your husband is from Ohio, is that right? Or works out of Ohio?
Yeah, he travels a lot for work. So yeah, he was just out there. But yeah, I'm like California born and raised. So it's been good to me.
Nice. Yeah, I love California. I love it out there. It's like the mountains meet the ocean everywhere you go. It's just so many cool places out there. Yeah.
That's true. It's good.
Were you guys, I'm sure not in the exact area, but affected at all by the wildfires?
No. Oh my gosh. So scary. I mean, being a Californian, it's kind of like wildfire season, right? We started saying wildfire season like a few years back, and now it's just like there's no season to it anymore. It's just like kind of constant threat of wildfire. But no, we're like an 8-hour drive from the LA fires. We're up north more. But yeah, we have, every year there's something to be worried about that's on fire for sure.
Terrifying.
Yeah,
absolutely terrifying. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you guys didn't have to deal with that.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, so it was really scary, really devastating.
Yeah. It's interesting to see, I'm pretty, I don't know if I want to say intense about, but I worry about the earth 24/7. Constantly. I'm constantly concerned about everything from consumerism to capitalism and how that's impacting our environment. But it's just so scary to think about how quickly things are escalating with our weather and unpredictable chaos, I will say.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. My like education background is in biology, with an emphasis on evolution and ecology. So I'm like a big science nerd. I'm a big we should all be fans of the earth, right?
Amen.
I've like my early career was in a lot of habitat conservation, restoration, and then having young kids. It's just like, what is going to be left for them, right? Like, what are we doing to make sure that we can actually sustain ourselves on the planet? So
that's so interesting. So that was what you went to college for.
Yeah. I went to college. I was like, the girl that was like, I'm going to save the world.
Greta
Got my
style.
degree in biology. Yeah. My first job out of college was as a duck biologist. Yeah, which is like, who knew that was a thing? So yeah, I spent a few years just like running around in the wetlands of Northern California, like trapping ducks and taking measurements and counting eggs and releasing them and doing the whole thing. So yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
And then so let's start back a little ways. Tell us about yourself as you grew up, and we'll get to what I referred to you as bad bitch on the intro. Why I've thought that later as you're discovering yourself, but kind of take us back to when you were younger and tell us about you.
Yeah, it's funny to hear people describe me as a bad bitch, like, or, people are like, oh, you're a baddie. And I'm like, what? Like, because that's so far away from how I ever identified, right? Like, I grew up in very typical, just like white, Christian, nuclear family in the suburbs, right? I had two sisters, the golden retriever, like the whole thing. And yeah, I thought when I was growing up, I was just like, oh, this is just like normal. This is just how everybody is. This is how the world works, right? Like girls are quiet. Girls are meant to make sure everybody's happy. It was like I needed to get straight A's all the time. It was like a lot of perfection driven stuff. So it was really hard on myself, right? There was a lot of just this idea of like being the right kind of girl, right? Like, and the right kind of girl, like the thing that's so insidious about that is like, what is right to who? Right? Like everybody's going to have a different opinion, right? Everybody's going to have a different desire for like what that means. And so when I was younger, like, teenager, probably younger than that, but like teenager through my 20s, it was very much like I contorted myself very intentionally based on whoever I was in front of, basically, right? So it was like I would read them and be like, what do they want from me? What are they expecting me to be or do? Or how are they expecting me to show up? And I would just like be a chameleon. I just would like turn into that so that they would be happy with my presentation of myself, right? And there's so many different psychological definitions and things about that, but I spent a lot of time and energy really trying to understand, like, okay, who is this person? What do they want me to be like? And then turning myself into that. And so it was just like this constant shifting back and forth, and it was mostly boys, right? It was mostly boys and men. What does this boy want me to be like? What does this man want from me? And like becoming that person for them, right? Whether it was a romantic partner, a boss, a colleague, like whoever it was, it just like was usually a male person.
It's so crazy because men are always encouraged to follow their dreams, to be who they are. Like boys will be boys, right? And then as women, we're encouraged to make it safe for everybody else, to appease everybody else, and to play a role that the usual man in the situation wants us to play, right? Like we're basically there to figure out how we need to show up for them versus them moving in a way to support and show up for us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was a lot of like, I just was like socialized into being a caretaker, right? It's like, how can I make sure that everybody else is comfortable? How can I make sure that everything around me is peaceful, right? And that was like an inner turmoil thing that I had going on, right? Like, so I ended up being just like very codependent, very like, I have to make sure that everybody outside of me is okay in order for me to be okay, right? It was like how I gave myself a sense of safety. It was like making sure that everybody else was sort of placated, right? And so if I could show up, especially in front of a boy or a man who like physically was more dominating, right? And had more power just because in a patriarchal culture, boys and men have more power, right? Like in order to ensure my own safety, emotional safety, physical safety, whatever it was, if I could make sure that he was happy with me, right? If I was like pleasing to him, then I could keep myself safe. And like, how scary, right?
Totally.
That's like a very common experience for so many girls and women to be like, in order to keep myself safe, even if they're not consciously doing it, right? Like, I need to make sure that this person is not going to like be upset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember, Kelly, being taught that or shown that in any way? You know, there's a lot of studies that are coming out about epigenetics, right? And that some of that we're just born with, and it's from previous generations of women, right? And not being able to be away from their husbands, not being able to vote, right? Like, we carry that lineage with us in our epigenetics, and sometimes it's not even something that our parents even taught us. And that's what I'm kind of sitting with, is I'm like, I did get taught that in certain ways in my roles, but I don't remember like ever being told those things, right? It's funny it's not funny. It's interesting to me to think about what part did we get shown and what part do we carry in us from our lineage that just expresses itself in that, where you can't notify a time where you're like, this is where I learned that. You know, it was an innate learning. So.
Yeah, you learn it, whether it's like through observation, right? And so many of the things, like the way that our brains develop and stuff, so much of it is earlier experiences or like epigenetics, right? So there might not be like a specific learning experience that you would remember, but I think about my lineage all the time. I think about the women in my lineage all the time, because I didn't have context for it until I was, like in my 30s and like really digging into therapy and my own relationships and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm like, I have one grandmother who was married 3 times. And then I have another grandmother who was married and her husband divorced her. She was a very devout Catholic. He had cheated on her. He wanted the divorce. So she was excommunicated from her church because she was divorced. She lost, essentially like her family because they disapproved of the divorce. Like, she lost so much, and it wasn't even her choice. But again, like, the only safety she had was to be attached to a man, right? She couldn't have a bank account. She couldn't own property. She couldn't do any of those things. And so then the man that was supposed to be her safety took that away, and she lost her whole community. She lost everything, and she never remarried. She never even dated again. I remember her describing it to me as like, at like having gotten food poisoning from something, and then you never eat that thing again. She was just like, why? Like, no, why would I ever do that again? She lived to be 96 years old, by the way. Wow. And then my other grandmother, was married 3 times again, because it was like she had children. She needed financial security. She needed some stability, right? And the only way she could access that was through marriage. And her first 2 marriages were horrible. They were just like abusive, alcoholic, terrible men. She became a mom at like 19. And so it's just like, I think about those experiences all the time, and I'm like, these women are still living through me, right? Like, they're my ancestors. Like, they're looking down at me now and saying like, let's do it differently, right? Like, let's shift this. Like, let's not carry that anymore. Like, let's not let that hold us down anymore, right? Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
A lot of hard work. Good
so much work.
It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah.
I was going to say, whether the work be through finding community, doing like, we do human design, astrology, therapy, like there's all these ways to kind of understand where these traumas and where all this stuff stems from, right? And I find it interesting to talk to women who have done some of this work, and it's just like, it never stops. You never stop like learning, where did this come from? Like, where is this wound living? Like, how am I showing up differently? How am I breaking this generational familiarity with this trauma? And I recently heard someone say, women would really thrive in community without men. And a man said, well, who's going to protect them? And the women said, protect them from who?
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Truly, because I think our nature is to be loving and love and care and support and all of these things. And when you have to do this work, you have to take a look at how that patriarchy has not only entered your life and how it influences your life, but then everyone before you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting because like, I don't know how, right? Like given my lineage, given the lessons that I, picked up or quote unquote learned growing up, like, I don't know how this happened, but I have just a wonderful, wonderful husband. Like my husband is just like number one, like you get it, you go do it. Like get out there, live the life you want. Like all he ever, ever, ever wants is to support me and encourage me and like help me, like he just wants to watch me live my life like a happiest, healthiest, biggest way possible. And so it's so interesting because I could talk about patriarchy and just the terrible things that it has done, right, to men and women. But then like I have this experience of this man who is so wonderful and so, so good. And sometimes I forget that I'm like, oh, that's not the typical like experience for a lot of people, right? Like a lot of people don't have this level of support from their partner. And then I get mad because I'm like, why is the bar that low? Like, why isn't the bar, like where he is? So yeah, it's an interesting place to live where I'm like, I know that and I've experienced that side of it. And then I also have this like wonderful supportive place at home. And so it's interesting to straddle the two.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because the movie, He's Just Not That Into You.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning, they're all like, I have a friend who, and this lore starts within women of like, there's this great guy out there. And there's these wonderful things. I knew a friend who knew someone whose sister knew someone. And we create this atmosphere of what a great man could look like. And that then allows us to accept bad behavior from men and make excuses for men. But then when you find someone who genuinely is in supportive and care, I always find the story that you say, or whoever who has that supportive partner, it's because the man decenters themselves from the woman's life. It's all about decentering, right? Like he is centering you and your experiences and your desires and, things that you want to achieve. That's what he's centering in your relationship. And that's so beautiful. And that's really what it boils down to, is how is that person then supporting the woman in their life and saying like, it's not about me. It's about you and your dreams. I'm going to support that. And then that brings us together as a partnership. And we can thrive together, because I'm not the center. You're not centering me. You're not, as you mentioned earlier, changing your emotions and trying to appease and like feel how to be small and like figure out what needs to be done so that you feel safe. Like all that's decentered and you can focus on you and your dreams.
Yeah. And I get to just be myself, right? Like you're totally right that kind of like, it's like dangling a carrot, right? Where so many girls and women are like, if I just try harder, if I just like wait a little longer, like if I just change this thing about myself, right? Or like then maybe he'll magically turn into the guy, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like with my relationship with my husband, I'm like, I never had to like try to prove anything to him. I never tried to, I never had to prove that I was like good enough or that I was the girl that he wanted. I never had to like even ask for, the level of affection or commitment or anything. It was like, he just gave it to me because he had it for me. Right. And it was like the most backwards experience of my life because I had never experienced that with anyone else. Right. It was always like me chasing, me begging, me trying, me doing more to try to like make it better or like make the guy like who want me even. And yeah, then my husband was just like, I asked him, I'm like, why are you that way, or like why are you so nice to me, and he's like, because you deserve nice, you deserve it because I love you. Like he gets so confused when ask him those questions, because he's like, what are you talking about? Like, I just love you, and this is how you treat somebody that you love. And like, so yeah, it was disorienting for me at first. But
do you feel like that's been the gateway for you to really heal?
Yes, I started going to therapy after he and I started seeing each other, and my reaction to our relationship, because it was so confronting the way that I had been existing in relationships, I flipped out, honestly. I pushed him hard away from me because I was like, I don't deserve this, right? Like, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't know how to operate within this dynamic. I was so stressed. I got shingles. I was like 26 and I got shingles.
God.
It was so terrible. And so
like,
I was
my
like,
body's literally reacting to the fact that I don't believe that I deserve this. Like,
yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, I obviously have like a stress problem. Like, maybe I should go talk to someone about how to deal with stress. And I remember like going to therapy for the first time, and she was just like asking me like the basic therapist questions, right? And I was like, oh yeah, it was fine. It was good. Everything's good. I have a normal, good life. I just am stressed. Like, help me not be stressed, you know? And it took me so many years. It took me so many years and so many different modalities, right? Like, I've done talk therapy, I've done EMDR, I've done Reiki, I've done acupuncture, I've done, you know, like the somatic stuff. I've done, you know, like so many different things. Just to try to unearth it all, right? And you're right, like, it never ends. We're always learning ourselves, we're always discovering a new part of ourselves. There's always more healing to do, right? Like, I went into it at first with like, just fix me.
It's a goal.
Like,
yeah. I've got a goal. Let's get to the end.
Yeah. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what to do about it. And then I'll be better, right? And then I'll be fine, and I can live the rest of my life.
And I'll never have to deal with whatever that thing is again.
Never.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
And now I'm like, oh, it's very much just a spiral, right? It's like you start way up here, and then you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so I have accepted that now.
You keep bypassing the things that you you became aware of. You know, you circle back around, you're like, oh, there it is.
The concept of like big T trauma versus little T trauma. And I think what you said is just, it's obviously not funny, but it is so common that women are like, what do you mean? I like wasn't beaten. I wasn't neglected. I wasn't left in a room by myself for days on end. I was fine. Nothing bad happened to me. And when you are in that vein of like, I don't deserve to even be in therapy right now because nothing actually happened to me.
Yes.
And then you start talking, you're like, well, I'll be damned.
The
whole time.
Turns out.
Every statement that person said to me, every situation where I was forced to act a certain way, that all builds to something of how you're showing up in today's world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I think especially when people are like, oh yeah, like as a kid, I wasn't abused. I wasn't like, I always had food. I always had, you know, and that's a tricky thing for me. Cause I'm like, I have so many privileges, right? Like, I'm like the white cis hetero, like partnered. I've got all the privileges, right? Except for being a man. And so, trying to really like reconcile the fact that yes, I have all of these privileges and I still have healing that needs to be done, right? Like I still am living within systems that were not built for me, right? I'm still living within systems that oppress me. And so then, but then you get into the comparing game of like, well, look at, you know, every Black person in America, look at, you know, trans people in America, look at, you know, like the entire LGBTQ community, like, but that's the thing is like, we all deserve healing. Like we all deserve love, right? Like we all deserve joy and rest. Even the white cis hetero men, right? Like they are also impacted by these systems that are harming them, but in different ways, right? So like, yes, they have the power, but they also have so much pain that is not being addressed. It harms everybody.
And until you can heal yourself, you can't show up for a community, and you can't show up to be a good advocate and ally. Like you can't do any of those things because you're still held back by your belief system. Like if you can't understand how patriarchy impacted you in your life, then how can you understand what a Black woman feels like?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all like heal yourself to heal the world.
Totally. Yeah. Oh my God. And like that really, like, yes, getting into a relationship with my husband was kind of like the initial push, right? That facilitated me like doing all the therapy and all that personal work. Becoming a mom just like it lit everything on fire. I was like, I thought I had done a great job at healing. And then I had a daughter and I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to model, I don't know how to not pass down this stuff to my daughter because it was so deep, right? It was just like in my actions. It was in my like subconscious things I would do. And I'm, just from experience, I'm like, I know that kids are like, they'll notice, they'll learn more from watching you than from listening to you. Right. So I was like, oh boy, all the wounds came up when I became a mom.
Kids are your greatest teachers, girls.
Yes.
Ladies, your children will be your greatest teachers in your lifetime.
Yes. Yeah.
They show you all your shit. All of it.
All of it.
Sometimes way more than you want at one time.
At one time, all at once. I'm like, please, no more shit. I have 2 kids. Yeah. Okay. So I've my daughter's my oldest, and my son is younger. And so that's another tricky thing because I'm like, oh, now I'm raising one of each, right? So now I get to see those dynamics and how different that is. And having never had a brother, right? I only had sisters. So yeah, it's a tricky beast. Trying to teach her to like, my son is very physical, right? So he just is like pure, I joke all the time, but he's just like pure core. Like he is just like a absolute wrecking ball. And he will tackle, they're 4 years apart. He's 3. He will tackle my daughter, who's 7, almost 7, like to the ground. No problem. He could tackle me if he caught me off guard. Like he could take me down. And he'll tackle her and just like take her to the ground and they'll be like wrestling and playing. And he'll just like literally WWE style, just like bouncing on her, like slamming on her, and so I've had to be like, Hallie, like, don't let him, if you don't like that, don't let him do that. Right. Trying to teach her like how to use her words to protect herself, right? Trying to teach her to listen to her gut, that her gut is telling her like if she's uncomfortable around a person and like you do not have to be around that person if your gut tells you you're uncomfortable around them. And teaching her also just to like physically defend herself. Like it's a weird line to be like, okay, violence isn't the answer, right? Like don't beat up on each other, but also if someone is not listening to your words, you punch them in the throat. You know what I mean? Like you get them away from you. Like like it's such a weird line to be like, don't hurt people, but also protect yourself, Yeah. It's crazy.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah. It's the hardest job you'll ever have. Motherhood.
It's so hard. I know. And then my son's a Scorpio. So he is just like Mr. Big Feelings, right? Like knows all of his, is very, very in touch with his feelings, will show them immediately all the time, no matter what, right? And so helping him understand like that's such a good thing, right? That's such a beautiful thing about you is that you know your feelings, you feel your feelings, you let them be known. It's okay to cry. Like, thank you for telling me you were sad, all of those things, but also wanting to make sure that I'm not, we've talked so much about like the women being like, protect me from who, right? It's like also making sure that my daughter also has space and permission to be soft, right? That she doesn't have to just be hard and on the defense all the time and always strong, right? Like she also gets to be soft. She also gets to fall apart. She also gets to be protected, right? And so, yes, my son gets those things too. And his job is to make sure that he is also protecting, right? That he is also creating safe space. And some of that he's doing by expressing his emotions, right? He's creating safe space by being soft, right?
Yes.
But also making sure that it's like, make sure that other people around you are safe, right? Like that's going to be his role.
Well, they're getting that from your husband.
Yes. Being
he's modeling that nicely for them, right? He's modeling that I create a safe space for mommy to be soft. Mommy doesn't have to be hard all the time because I give her a safe space.
Yeah, that's true.
So she's learning that from him, which is beautiful. What a beautiful gift he's given her too.
Yeah. And then like I do get to be a badass when I, like
when you choose, right? But you don't have to be a badass in order to survive. Right.
Totally.
And I think those are two very different things that women sometimes I think get confused nowadays, and that we desperately desire a space to be soft and to be held and to be nurtured and to be loved by our partners. And when we don't get that and we're constantly in badass bitch mode and have to be boss bitch all the time and have not that you can't be both of those things, but there comes a time where you want to be soft and you want to be held and you want to be feminine. And that's what we hope that our partner provides, where you don't have to walk on eggshells. You don't have to wonder about, do I have to look a certain way or say a certain thing or, walk on eggshells in order to make them happy to get that. No, that's not a safe space. That's a curated space. Right. And that's curated by how you decide to show up to them that day. True space that's being held for you is a gift, and it's really valuable. And it sounds like you really recognize that in its fullest. And what a great thing your husband's doing for your kids and for you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And also like outside of partnership, right? Because like, especially with young kids, it's like when I need a break, it's like he's the only person that can give me that break, and we're both just like at capacity all the time between work and kids and all the things, life. And so being able to, like, I had a friend describe it to me as like leaning outside of just your like little nuclear family package, right? And like into the broader community, like leaning into your friends, leaning into your, if you have family nearby, like whatever that other community is, because like that piece of it is like, we have to learn how to be interdependent, like we already are interdependent, right? But we're like, broadly speaking, not doing a great job of actually depending on each other, right?
So we call it siloed. We're very siloed these days. We don't want to burden anybody. Everybody's so busy, right?
Yes.
And really, everybody also just needs breaks.
Yes.
They just need help, and sometimes it's different. Sometimes you need help with the kids. Sometimes I need help moving a couch, bring it on, dude. Get your friends over here. Like it's different, right? Like there's just different things that you need at different times. And beautiful.
And that's important. Yeah. And like everybody is in need of support and help at some point, right? And also like being a science nerd, right? I know that humans evolved in community. Like our brains evolved specifically for emotional and social cooperation. Like that's one of the things that helped Homo sapiens literally evolve and survive for as long as we have. So like, we literally, our brains are literally wired to need each other. And it just helps with so many things, right? From the actual practical, tangible day to day, all the way up through our mental health, our physical health, like when we can lean on each other and help each other. And it feels nice to be able to show up for someone, right? Like when you have the capacity and you get to help somebody, that feels good too, right? It's for everybody.
Yeah, agreed.
I am dying to know what your astrological sign is and what your husband's is.
My son is a Sagittarius. My rising sign is Virgo, and my husband's sun is a Taurus.
Okay.
And his rising sign is a Leo, but he doesn't show up like a Leo at all. So he feels very Taurus-y to me. Yeah.
Okay. Love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. I was gonna guess you were a Sag.
I'm a Sag.
Oh yeah.
Sag.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is why we like your energy.
Yeah. It's so fun. Oh my gosh.
That like
Queen. We love her.
Just a bunch of fire signs talking, chatting.
It's funny because I'm a Leo sun and a Sag rising.
Oh,
so like lots of fire happening here. But I just always am like really like immediately connected to other fire signs. I'm like, oh, I just love everything about them. The whole time you were talking, I'm like, something about this I find familiar. I like.
Yeah. We're just so fun. We're so fun.
So fun.
Yeah, that's like one of the biggest rubs between my husband and I is that he is an earth sign. And so he is like, oh my God, he's so slow. Like he's so heavy, right? Where I'm like, I am very like, right, I'm a Sagittarius. I'm like, let's go. We're going to go travel. We're going to go move over here. We're going to do this thing. We're going to do that. And he's like, it just like, I describe it as like, it's like me trying to roll the boulder up the hill to get him to do, and it's like, we need each other in that way, right? Like he needs me to like light a fire under his ass, and I need him to ground me.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's a lot of friction that we have to work through when it comes to that stuff.
Well, I'm sure he appreciates your Virgo, abilities to keep things organized.
Yes.
Like I'm sure that's helpful for his brain.
Yeah. I am a very organized Sagittarius. Yes.
So during most of this time, right, you were in the science field still, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about when things started to change and when you started to deviate from that plan.
Yeah, it was not a choice. It was a motherhood did it to me. Motherhood. And that's not true, right? Like, so basically, yeah, I was in the science field. I was doing like biology. I was doing environmental education. I was, doing the whole like I'll save the world planting one tree at a time thing, which I loved doing, and was important work. And then I got pregnant, and then ended up having two miscarriages. So got pregnant, lost it, got pregnant again, lost it. And those experiences kind of just like blew up my life, right? I just like had no concept that was a thing that might happen. But it was very like, I got the sex education that was like, do not have sex or you will get pregnant, right? Yeah. So I just like spent all those years trying desperately not to get pregnant.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, I'm ready. I was like, I remember like taking my last birth control pill so ceremoniously, right? Like I took it and I was like, and any moment now I will be pregnant, right? Like just like immaculate conception. Because I was done taking birth control. So yeah, like getting pregnant at all took a long time. And then I lost my first two pregnancies and I just was so devastated. I did not at all feel prepared for the fact that is a reality, right? The statistics are something like 1 in 3 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage. So it just like kind of turned my whole world upside down. And it was one of those moments where I like looked at my life and I was like, something deep is here and I need to like be focusing on that. So I ended up actually quitting my job and just kind of focusing on healing. And again, like trying to do the thing where I'm like, there's something wrong with my body. Like someone tell me how to fix it so I can just have a baby, And so I chased that down for a long time. And then I did end up like taking another job with a solar company, and I was working for them and I got pregnant again. And I told my boss, like, hey, I have a history. I told him, like right after I found out, I was like, I have a history of miscarriage. Like, I just want you to know, be upfront with you in case something happens and I need to take time off work, right? But this time what ended up happening is I got hyperemesis gravidarum, which is like extreme, terrible, like life-threatening nausea and vomiting in pregnancy. And so my doctor was like, I was to the point where I would get so sick that I couldn't even look at a screen. Like I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't scroll a phone. I couldn't read even a book, honestly, because the eye movement would make me sick. Mm-hmm. And so my doctor was like, I'm writing you out of work. Like you can't work, right? So I was out on disability, and then they laid me off while I was out on disability. And like so sick. All I could do was lay in bed for like 9 months. So yeah, I just like lost my job, pregnant, super sick. And I'm sure everyone I tell that story to is like, you should have sued them. Like that has to be illegal. And I was like, with what energy would I have, like I didn't have the capacity. So yeah, they shouldn't have laid me off, but that's where we were. And then I had my daughter and I had terrible postpartum depression, terrible postpartum anxiety. It was just like a really, really, really hard time. And I also felt totally unprepared for motherhood. Because I was like, holy shit, like this is so hard, right? I had a full identity crisis. It was like my days went from working and being like the independent, the career gal, and like, you know, moving around the world freely. And then starting with pregnancy, I just was flattened. It's just like everything got taken away from me. And then my daughter was born, and I was, you know, it's like so grateful, so happy to have her. And also so much like, what have I done? Right? Like, what have I done?
Who's coming to get her and giving me a break later? When does that happen?
Yeah, it just was like so relentless and so overwhelming. And I just was not at all prepared. I had a ton of support from my mom. Thank goodness. A ton of support, obviously, from my husband. Even like friends and family. We had the meal train. Like, I had a decent amount of support, but I just like felt really unprepared for the transition for a long time. Honestly, it took me a long time to kind of figure it out, to the point where when I got pregnant with my son, I was like, oh shit. Like, do I want to do like, do I want to do this again? And again, super glad I did. Love both of my kids dearly. They're the best thing in my whole world. And it's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an and. It's not an or, it's and. You know, I love them and
most of the time, as someone who doesn't have kids, all you hear is the wonderful, great things and how much you love them and how they change your world and all these beautiful things. But it's like, I bet it would be way more helpful for people to be for real about this, because I do have a friend that's for real about her struggle with her children, and I think is so helpful, because how can you build community and how can you build support when people have no idea what you're going through?
Yeah, exactly. And so like how that manifested for me was, I thought something was wrong with me, right? I thought I was like, oh, I'm a terrible mom. I don't know how to do this. I'm bad at this. Like, why do I suck at this? Why is this so hard for me when everybody else seems fine? Right? I definitely like had it in my head that, I mean, this was like one of those other things where it's like, I quote unquote learned it, right? Where like motherhood was just the most natural thing a woman could ever do, right? It was that's what I got really mad when I like wasn't getting pregnant, or when I like had my 2 miscarriages. I was like, why is my body broken? This is what my body is designed to do. This is the one thing, right? I got so mad at my body. I was like, this is the one thing you're supposed to do, and you're not fucking doing it. And I was like, what a backwards ass thing to think, right? Like, my body is meant for so much more. And then what a beautiful thing that it might possibly have the ability to create another life, right? Like, it was, you know, that should, it infuriates me that it's like, we think that our one and only job is to reproduce. Like, that's so,
it's
you know,
tied into religion, it's tied into capitalism, patriarchy, like all of the structures that are put in place in the world that we live in is based upon you being able to have a baby. Yeah. Because if there's no babies and children, then the rest of this world can't run on the structures that they put in place, right? So instead of being like, this is beautiful, you're magical, you're a fucking portal of life, like instead of these like ceremoniously beautiful things that, like you said, may or may not happen. Every woman's different.
Yeah.
It's a possibility, not your duty.
Yes. Yeah. Not your duty. And like, yeah, it's just such an insidious thing to be like, if you don't have kids, then you're like, again, the right kind of woman, right? Like, that's so gross. Like, our lives are meant for more than that, right? Like, it should be whatever you want it to be.
Right. I learned, and a nurse for 27 years. I learned this week. Okay. This week. I'm 53 years old. This week, y'all, that the patriarchy, right? When we talk about how it's hurting everyone, science has been based on men only for almost ever.
Yeah.
I'm going to say ever. Recently, however, we're starting to actually study women. And the epigenetics is coming a long way. And I just read a study this week, because I find things still scientifically fascinating, that, and you may love this, and wouldn't this have been a gift to you, is that men should really be working out and getting their nutrition dialed in for 9 months prior to impregnating a woman because his genes, his epigenetics determines a whole bunch of things in your pregnancy.
That's so
Isn't that
insane.
interesting? Including, my love, nausea and vomiting. Comes from them.
I'll take that. Yeah. I'll take that right over to my husband.
Yeah. And I will be taking some notes.
It comes from them. It doesn't come from us. It's not our doing, but we have to bear it. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm getting chills. I got chills when I heard it. And I'm getting chills now sitting here saying it, right? How many women are in your boat who said the exact same things like, wow, why am I so broken?
Yeah.
Why? What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Motherfuckers, it was you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
this whole time.
And it's, and not that I'm not, man hating currently. I'm just saying what a gift that would have been to women had we studied these things earlier, had we really taken into consideration these things in studies and really been studying women this whole time. We could have been giving women answers this whole time to make them feel better about whatever that is, and possibly even empowering men to take their own health and wellness into their own hands before they decide to sire a child, right? Like how much your husband is very in tune, right? And so how much would he have done had he known that anything that he was doing or consuming or eating would have affected you the way it did?
Yeah.
He probably would have changed some things had he known that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he would have taken it very seriously.
Yeah, he would have taken it very seriously. And we just, most men, this is not common knowledge because we're just now starting the science, So what an interesting, I just have a lot of hope that science is going to continue to help us down this path and help women like you that, are struggling in the beginning. And it could have, your miscarriages could have had absolutely nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, it's so like, I love how you said, like, what a metaphor, right? That like women didn't cause it. We just have to bear it.
We have to bear it.
Right? Like so much of, and that goes back to like the care work, right? The community care, the familial care, all of it. It's like, for the most part, women didn't cause any of the problems that we're dealing with here today, but we are the ones who have like, the responsibility has been placed on our shoulders basically to like knit everything back together, right? To fix it all, to like hold it all together, right? And that's
it's one of our capacities. I think it's one of our superpowers, right? I think women have that ability. Without it, they say men, we wouldn't have community. Without women, we wouldn't have community. It would fall apart. Because we are genetically driven to do that, it's part of our genome to do that, is to be like, you're my sister and I'm going to take care of you, you're my love and I'm going to take care of you. And we look outward to make sure that people that's the nurturing side of us that men don't really hone. And we do have that. And it is part of our responsibility, I think, but it shouldn't be solely ours. Shouldn't be solely ours.
I won't stay on the soapbox long, I swear, to everybody involved. But, right now it's happening with all reproductive rights being stripped from the White House resources. And also, as of yesterday, the CDC took down all resources for women's reproductive rights and any sort of care when it comes to sexual health for women. It's just going to continue. Like, I'm so hopeful for science, but right now is like a time that women have to be very vigilant about what's going on, because we are currently and actively being stripped of all information that will help us in this area. So it's just so important that we continue having conversations like this with other women and continue sharing what we know, because literally it's being erased as we speak. So
yeah. It absolutely is going to come back to the community piece, right? Like the grassroots connections, the grassroots education, the grassroots community and support, like all of those things.
Women's groups are picking all that information up and creating their own sites and being like, screw you. We're gonna, like just continuing to put the pieces back together. So
powerful. And just like no longer being able to expect that some overpower has our best interest in mind. Right? Like we have to have each other's best interest in mind.
Agreed.
So I have to know how you took a hard right then into what you are doing today, because whoa, that was so cool to see.
Yeah, it was a hard ride. It was probably like the hardest. Yeah. So everything that we've talked about so far, right? I was like really good at performing the good girl. I was really good at, being a mom. I was really good at just like planning that, just kind of showing up in that like perfect, like expectations met like role, right? Even with a very supportive husband who just wanted me to be myself, like it was so just in my head of like, these are the things I have to be. These are the things people expect of me. I have to have all my shit together. My kids always have to be perfect. Dinner always has to be home cooked. Like there can be no dirty dishes in the sink. I was just kind of like driving myself crazy. And I think it was because I had lost so much of myself in those early days of motherhood. Right. I had lost my work. I had lost my sense of identity. I had kind of lost touch with just who I was in every facet. And so I just went like real deep into performing motherhood really, really well. And I was like, well, that's not me, right? That's not who I am at my core, in my little Sagittarius heart, right? That doesn't actually line up.
It's one of my roles. It's not me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I had kind of turned it into me, right? Because that's what I thought was expected of me. And that's where I thought I had any sense of control, right? Where it's like, okay, if this is what I have, then I'm going to control it so that I'm really, really, really good at it, right? But I just was really unhappy. I just was really like, I was not a happy mom. Everybody is short with their kids sometimes, but I just like, I wasn't present. I just wasn't like delighted in them. I just wasn't the mom I wanted to be, on top of also not being the person I wanted to be, right? Like I had been an adventurous person. I loved to travel. I had, like gone skydiving. I had done, like done all this cool stuff. And then it was like, and then I just was like a mom in suburbia, and I was so fucking bored. I was so bored. Oh my God.
Speak it, Sag Queen.
Yes. So bored. And then that grandmother that I talked about that lived to be 96, who never remarried, when she passed, which was fairly recently, it was like all of a sudden I just was like, oh my God, this is temporary. Like this life that I have is temporary. And if God willing, I get to live to be 96, is this what I want to look back on? Like, if I keep going like this, am I going to be pleased with myself when I get to the end? And I just was like, oh my God, this isn't what she would have wanted for me, right? She was like my number one cheerleader. Like one of the things she always used to do is like me and my sisters would go visit her, and we would, like my little sister, like when she left college, she dropped out of college, and she told my grandma, and my grandma was like, good for you. Good for you. Like you follow your heart, or if like when I would break up with a boyfriend, she'd be, good for you. Like she just was so, like in her way, just wanted and encouraged and supported us to be the fierce and like whole people that we were, and to not like have to depend on men the way that she did, right? To not have to carry the burdens that she had to carry from her generation. And so, yeah, when she died, it really shook me up. And I just was like, I got to do something different. I got to do something big. And knowing myself as a Sagittarius, right, I had tried to do all the things that are like quote unquote available to moms, right? I tried to like pick up a new little side hobby, or like join a group, or like do exercises at home, to like get a sense of myself back. But it always felt like I was just squeezing myself into the cracks, and sometimes those cracks disappeared because my kids were having a hard time, or my husband was traveling for work, or there were all these reasons why like those little slivers that I counted on to make me feel like a person would just disappear, and I had no control over it. And that made me spiral, because it was like all of a sudden I disappeared again, right? My last little grasp on myself disappeared again. And I felt like I didn't have any say in it, And so I just was like, what's the craziest fucking thing a middle-aged mom could do? Like, what's the most just out there thing? Like, wouldn't it be so wild And I don't know where rally cars, I don't know what my introduction was to rally cars. I have no idea where it came from. But at some point in my life, I had seen a rally car like flying over a jump. And I was like, that's insane. Like, that's awesome. So I was like, what if as a middle-aged mom, like I became a rally driver to kind of find myself again? And I mentioned it, you know, to my husband and to a friend, and a male friend. And both of them were like, fuck yes. Like, do it. Like, you're doing it. Like, we are here. We're going to make it happen. And so it was really like having that, because it's one thing to have an idea for yourself, right? But it's another thing to have people around you who are like, not only supporting you and encouraging you, but like honestly held me accountable. They were like, let's get on a call. What are our first steps? Like, here, you know, they were like, I honestly, I was so scared. I was so scared because it was so outside of the box. And I had been living in this.
You'd never driven a stick yet.
No, I had never driven a stick.
Right.
Yeah. I had no idea how to drive, a manual car, let alone like race one in the dirt, you know? And I was so scared in the whole process. And literally, like when it came to, they were like, oh, there's a rally school up in Washington, there's a couple rally schools across the state or across the states. And Washington was the closest one. And they also happened to have like a women's program. So they would put together like all women's rally driving classes. And I was like, oh, I have to be around only women. Like I cannot do this with a bunch of dudes, you know, like it was too scary. And so we were like, okay, great. I'm going to go up there and do a class, one of their all women's classes. And I was so scared, and I had so much resistance inside my own brain that my husband literally was like, I had pulled up like the hotel, I had pulled up the class, I had all the things. I just could not make myself click like book now, right? Like I couldn't execute that last step. And so I was like, I went to him and I was like, I need you to help me do this. And he came over and he like sat next to me and he just went like, dude, like typed in the credit card information. Like he was like, okay, now you're booked, right? So to have other people like really holding me accountable and helping me actually with the like actionable steps, because I had so much fear that I was like, it would have paralyzed me, right? I would have stopped myself before I even started, because it's scary to change things.
Yeah.
Right? It's scary to do something that's unfamiliar, right? And that's what I've learned is like, even if the familiar thing is not making you happy, fear will keep you there, because at least you kind of have a handle on what the threats are, right? Yeah. Whereas like if you go do something, even if it's something you want to do, if you go do something that's so unfamiliar and different and new and there's change, like that sets off in me and my little sensitive, hypervigilant nervous system. It set off all the alarm bells. It was like, you cannot do that. Like there is danger out there. Like it's not safe, right? Like it's safe here inside this little house. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like you're safe inside your little house with your, you know, like your little kids and your little life. But my whole body, like my heart was just like suffocating, just absolutely suffocating. And so, yeah, I just went for it, man. We borrowed my brother-in-law's car because like who drives a stick shift anymore, right? So it was like, just so happened that my brother-in-law had a manual car. So he let us borrow it. He even like babysat the kids so that my husband and I could take his car. And like,
that's amazing.
It was so good. So like, just like another, you know, wonderful, supportive man. Yeah, came and stayed with the kids, and my husband, I was like, I'm absolutely not driving down the street. Like, right, you learn in a parking lot when you're learning stick. And so we went to just a big open parking lot, and my husband again is very kind and knows me very well, and so he was very gentle, but he also was like, you have to do it. Like pushing me very, very gently. And I cried. Oh my God. I cried so much. And because I've gone through so much therapy, right? And because my husband is like such a safe space for me, like I just sat there and I was like, okay, I want to cry. So just let it out. And I was just like crying and like talking through it. I was like, okay, I'm not going to break the car. Right? Like if I stall, I'm not going to break the car. And he was like, no, you're not going to break the car. And I was like, you're not going to leave me Like, you're not going to divorce me if I suck at driving a stick, you know? And I just was like saying out loud the things that were scary, even though they were so dumb, right? Like, there's no logical basis to me thinking that my husband was going to leave me because I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. But that's one of the fears that was trying to stop me from doing it, right?
Well, you gave your inside voice an outside voice, right? And I think that's so powerful is it doesn't matter because when it stays inside, no matter how little it seems, you can build that. Don't underestimate what your own mind will do to you.
Amen.
You know what I mean? So at least when you say it out loud, you're giving that like a verbal, this is what's going on. So someone else can then be like, okay, me telling you, not you telling you.
Yeah.
This is chill. It's all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's not true.
Yeah.
Bitch, that's a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I was like, I'm not going to break the car. You're not going to leave me. And then I said, you're not going to tease me. And I burst into tears. Like I was and I was like, that was the thing where like it had been living inside me that he was going to tease me, that he was going to ridicule me, that I was going to look stupid. Right. And he just was like, no, you know, just like rubbed my back and just like shook his head no and just like let me sob. And I was like, you're not going to tease me just because I'm learning something new. Like, you're not going to tease me like if I'm bad at something, you know, just at first, like while I'm learning. And it just was like, I let it all out. And I was like, okay, all right, let's try again, you know? And I stalled like 1,000 times. But I was so proud of myself, right? Once I finally got it, I was like, oh my God, like I'm doing it, right? Like I'm driving a stick shift. And yeah, it's funny because I'm like, that was the easiest part of the whole process.
Yeah.
But emotionally, it was the biggest barrier for me.
Yeah.
To like get over the fear of like looking stupid or like the fear of not knowing something, right? Like the fear of making a mistake in front of someone. Like, so once I got through that, I mean, going up to the rally school, it's called Dirtfish. It was amazing, but it was also very scary. Like, I had like a full panic attack the whole time. It just, you know, it was like we were in a classroom for the first bit of the morning and the instructor was like, okay, we're talking about the physics of race and rally cars and weight transfer and you know, all the things and when you turn and when you brake. And I was like, what? Like, I just couldn't comprehend. My brain was so offline because I was so scared. But then after like 30 minutes in the classroom, they were like, okay, let's go. Like, grab a helmet. You're getting in the car. And it was just like straight up hands-on learning. There's like a full built out rally car with like a roll cage and like a harness. And we have like intercom on the helmet, you know, and my instructor was just like, go ahead, like just drive as fast as you can towards that cone. I'll tell you when to,
if you roll this thing over, it's going to be fine.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, it just was like the craziest feeling. She was like, it's literally just like drive as fast as you can towards this cone. And at the right moment, I will tell you to brake and turn and you'll do it, you know? And, I was like, there's no fucking way. There's no way. Like, I was like, I'm absolutely not going to slide around these corners. I'm just going to do like the granny drive. I'm just going to do like around the corner. It's going to be fine. You know, like, and I did it. I just like pedal to the metal, you know, like just floored it and went as fast as I could. And she was like, okay, like lift, you know, turn, brake. And I did the whole thing. And the back end of the car slid out around the corner and I caught it and kept driving. And I literally screamed, I did it. I was like, when I came out, I was like, I did it. Like, it's amazing. I was so proud of myself.
That's awesome.
It was so cool. And it just like, the thing that I have not expected at all about cars, because cars are also like this very masculine thing, right? They're sold as like, you can be a car guy. And if you're going to be a car girl, you have to be a sexy one, you know? And I'm like, I'm not either of those, you know? And so it has felt very empowering. Like it's given me a lot of confidence, to know how to drive a car, even just if I wasn't going to be like rally racing, just to know how to drive a car on loose surfaces, to know how to handle a car if I spin out, like to know how to handle a car in like unsafe conditions, you know, I have a lot more confidence just in keeping myself safe, right?
Right.
And that goes back to like empowering myself to be my own safety instead of looking externally for that. And then, yeah, we bought a little car. It's a 1985, which is the same year I was born. A little like rear wheel drive BMW with the intention of building it out into being a rally car. And I don't know how to work on cars. My husband doesn't know how to work on cars. We're just like figuring it out one piece at a time. But in order to afford it, like in order to buy that car, we had to sell our family's like camper, our little like pop-up tent trailer. And that was so hard because that was like such a moment of realizing like we are doing this as a family for me, right? Like as a family, we have chosen to support me financially, right? We've chosen to support me with our time. We've chosen to support me with whatever resources that we have, so that I can be a whole happy person. And so then that, I can show up for our family better, right? But it was like when we had to make the choice to sell that camper, like we had so many fun family memories in that camper, right? It was like every summer we were just like in that camper all the time. And it was just like our happy place as a family. And we sold it to another family with 2 young kids. And my daughter, I'm gonna like cry talking about it. Oh. My daughter was devastated. Oh. Devastated. Like when they drove away, she just like collapsed in tears. And I just like sat in the driveway and held her. And she was just like sobbing. And I was like, oh my God, am I a bad mom? Yeah. Right? Like, am I a selfish mom? Like, am I hurting my kids? Because I want to do this silly thing, And I had to really like talk myself through, like, yes, my daughter is hurting, but I'm not harming her, right? Like, I'm not causing her like active harm. Like, I'm doing this so that I can show up for her even more. Like, yes, she is hurting right now, and I can help her through that because I am allowing myself to be a whole person, right? Because I am investing in myself, because I know that I still get to exist as a whole human being. I can be here for her. I can be there for her, right? And she cried the whole rest of the night. She cried in the bathtub that night. She cried when I was putting her into to bed that night. And it was really, really hard to be like, to come up against that like selfish mom fear, right? Like, have I done something bad to my kids because I want this thing for myself,
Well, and so it's the theme of you not feeling you deserve to take up space.
Yes.
So the second you take up space, you get the immediate universe saying, "You sure?
Yeah.
You sure? Exactly. Are you healed?" You say,
right?
Okay. Well, let me give you this last little lesson about what that can look like. And good for you for still saying like, no, I deserve to take up space and I deserve this. I mean, my dad sold my dog at a yard sale once and I forgave him, right? So, in the grand scheme of things, eventually she'll forgive you. And you're demonstrating what it looks like for her, for when she wants to take a risk, for when she wants to take up space to say, do it, just like your grandma did for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
yeah.
cool.
And she wasn't even like mad at me, right? She just was sad.
Bad.
Yeah. She just was so sad. And so like being able to sit with her sadness and not take it as like mine, right? Not take it as my fault, and not take it as like, oh my God, I have to fix this. Otherwise I won't be okay, right? I just was like, she's sad. And it's okay for her to be sad. I was sad too. I love that camper too,
Right.
So yeah, just being able to like sit with her through it, help her move through it, and help her see that like sometimes sad things happen, and like when we can lean on each other and help each other through it. And on the other side of that, now we have a rally car that she loves to help us work on.
Right.
We have like this little like project car in the garage, and she gets underneath it, right? She gets her hands greasy. She like found a bag of zip ties, and she zip tied a chain of zip ties on my side view mirror, and they are my like good luck zip ties. So I'm like, we go to a race and people are like, do you want these zip ties on here? And I'm like, yep.
Yep.
They're my daughter's good luck charm. So
And how many adventures are you guys going to have going to these different races and meeting new people? And what kind of cool experiences is she going to be able to look back and be like, I was really sad about this chapter being over, but this next chapter brought us rally racing, which is a whole culture in and of itself, I'm assuming, like any other race culture, right? And so the families come, they camp out, it's a weekend. It opens up a whole nother set of things for her, which I'm sure she's too young, obviously, to understand that now, but we'll look back and be like, wow, it was really cool. And my mom's a baddie.
Yeah.
Most importantly.
Most importantly.
Yeah. It's been great.
Are there any other lessons that you learned along the way that we didn't really get to today that you're like, man, this was really impactful and it's still something that's super impactful for me?
Yeah, I think accessing fun again, like one of my mantras in this whole process is that fun is not frivolous. Like we think of fun as being so like a luxury, right? Or like I certainly grew up believing that like if I'm going to do something fun, I have to earn it, or like it has to be justified, right? And same with rest, but fun is like one of the things that makes life wonderful, right? And you don't have to earn it. You don't have to quote unquote deserve it. You know what I mean? There doesn't have to be an ROI attached to it. Like it's not this frivolous thing. It's this beautiful, empowering, joyful thing. And it helps us, right? We're talking about everything that's happening in the world right now. And well, everything that's happening in America right now. And it's like fun and joy are tools that we have to care for ourselves and care for our community so that we can keep going when things get hard.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a lot of hard shit in life. Right. No matter who you are, right? No matter what privileges you have, like you will always come up against something hard. And being able to balance that with fun, like being able to balance that with joy and levity is how we get through it, right? It's how we keep up our stamina and it's how we heal, honestly. Yeah. Like there's so much healing through play. There's so much healing through having fun together and laughing together, right? Like even when things are hard, it's okay to still also laugh and have fun and make that a priority, right? I would say it's important to do that when things are hard.
Necessary, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't think we put it as our necessaries, It's an add-on, it's an afterthought, it's a well maybe,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's a very historically like female thing to do, right? Like it's a very much like a child or like, oh, the women getting together, like gossiping and talking. And it's like, no, that's also not what joy is. And it's also, we've been forced to be in a masculine space of like achieve and be perfect and all these things. And that just doesn't leave a lot of room. Like you were saying earlier, when you're just filling cracks with fun, the moment something comes up, you assume the responsibility then of fixing, not you, but in the general you, right? Well, now we have to then get rid of our fun and do this thing. And I mean, I think Christy and I really experienced that doing the podcast, right? We both have a lot of responsibilities and things and saying like, hey, we're going to sit with other women on microphones and we're just going to spend time giving voices to people's stories. And that's what we're going to do. And it's not going to make us a single penny, hopefully one day, not for now. Costing us pennies, yes, not making at the moment, but this is important. And this is what brings us joy. And saying that's enough.
Yeah. That's enough.
We really enjoy getting to know everybody and hearing everybody's stories and knowing that it's an inspiration out there for other people, and other women. And I won't just say women because I think everybody's stories, my husband reports back all the time and he's like, oh my gosh, so fascinating. I learned so much about this guest or that, so it's not just for women, but we're doing it so that women hear themselves and everybody's story. And it's been a beautiful journey. We're having a great time. But we also have dance parties because we love to do that.
Amazing. Yeah.
30 and over dance party. Wear what you want. We don't give a shit what you look like. We don't care what you wear. If you want to be half naked, go ahead. It's safe. If you want to wear sweatpants, great. Don't care. Yeah. And we have a great time just hanging out and dancing because we think that's important. And you don't get to do that when, if you don't want to go to the bars and, be the 30 something or the 50 something person that the 20-year-olds are going like, why are you here?
Yeah.
What's going on here? That's weird.
Yeah. It's amazing.
To give ourselves a space. So just finding things that are, I bought roller skates at the age of 52 the other day.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, like do fun things. Just do fun things.
Yeah.
You're never too old. I love that.
And do fun things and like make them as important as the productive work, right? Like that's what, like zooming out and being like, what is the point of all the productivity anyways? Like it's just making other people money, right? Like, I know, then that's a privileged place to be, right? Like we all need to be able to pay our bills. We all need the like financial security, right? But it's like, who is it benefiting?
Right.
Totally.
Right. And like me having fun benefits me directly, right? It benefits my kids directly. It benefits my husband directly. Like it benefits my entire community when I'm having fun, like, and I feel like a whole person, and I feel like I have a healthy coping strategy when things get hard. Like that benefits everybody that I care about directly,
Joy is a rebellious act these days.
I'm so rebellious. It's so powerful. Yeah.
So powerful. I totally agree. I absolutely agree. And you are a beacon of that on the intraweb, my friends.
Thank you.
And I was drawn right to you, my Sagittarius friend. I also think somebody should write a book after listening to you and to others that we should, it should be a guide based on like, are you a Sagittarian? Then you're going to get bored really easily.
Yeah. It's so fucking bored.
And motherhood is going to be hard for you unless you find a lot of ways to allow your Sagittarianism to be sparked. And you are literally on fire all the time.
All the time.
And you need an outlet for that isn't related to raising small humans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have an outlet that's just yours. And it has to be something that brings you that level of like excitement and newness. And it can't be the same thing all the time. We get to, we literally get too bored.
So bored. Yeah.
Right. And I won't even talk about how bored quickly this one gets, right? As a Leo. So like we should know, knowing ourselves is such a gift. And however you do that, whether that's by tarot cards, astrology, human design, all the modalities that you've done, right? Like all of them. It gets you closer to self, and understanding self lets you get your own roadmap in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's what we're encouraging everybody to do is find your own roadmap. What makes you happy? And it's not going to be the same necessarily as the person sitting next to you.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that we could point out probably to most people to be like, you're going to struggle with that because of you're a Sag or you're right, like because of how you're wired. And learning from others like that so that you can kind of see those things coming, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point. Like my basis for comparison was my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom my whole childhood, and she's a Cancer.
Yeah.
And so she's like being at home with the kids, doing the stuff. Like that was her, what she wanted. Like that was her space. Loved it. Yeah. And so then I became a mom and I was like, why do I hate this? Why is this so, Right. But I was like, I thought I was like the wrong kind of woman, but like, no, I'm just a different kind. We're all ourselves,
Yeah. Yeah. And we all do it differently and that's okay. And we all need different things as outlets, and your mom's outlet could have been that she had her a card game that she went to once a week and that was all that's all she needed. And that's cool. Everybody's different and there's no judgment. But I'm a Sagittarius and I know you, and we're so easily bored.
Yeah.
That if you are a stay-at-home mom and you don't get to see any other adult humans or have any real conversation and there's nothing that sparks any sort of mental like spark in your brain, you're going to be like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you have to have something that, because that lets you come back to your kids and really enjoy them.
Yeah.
And not feel like, oh, I'm going to die if I don't get some sort of outlet soon, right? Like that you don't want to feel that way around your children. And just knowing that and knowing that about yourself makes that a much easier journey to tackle. But instead of feeling like I'm clearly a terrible mom, like we put these labels in our mind that we're comparing to other people, and oh, she's beautiful and she's got her hair done and her makeup done and her nails done and she's got 2 small children and she feeds them organically and she makes food from scratch every day and like not everybody is wired to do that.
And not everyone freaking wants to.
Or wants to.
Yeah.
You know, like not everyone has the same goal to get through this life, you know? So we always ask our guests this, and I know you touched on this a little bit, but who are some women in your life that you felt so inspired by and you felt like have really helped you through your journey?
There are so many, right? And it's honestly like the answer that's coming up for me directly is like the ones that I'm closest to, like the friends that I have watched go through their own transformations, right? The friends who I have watched them go through their like dark night of the soul, and come out the other end multiple times, right? Like, I mentioned like my grandmothers, right? My mom, like watching just the strength and the power of these women that I've known personally, I think helps like kind of hold a mirror to me for what I am capable of, right? Because it's one thing to, we have these like very iconic women through history, right? That we can look at and be like, wow, what a powerhouse. Like what a change maker, right? Like what an amazing influence. But when we put people on a pedestal like that, it's hard to see that we have that capacity in ourselves too, right? We're like, well, yeah, she did it, but I can't, right? But being able to recognize, like in my own life, the women that I'm friends with, my sisters, right? Like my grandmothers who went through so much, like being able to see like, oh, they're real people. Yeah. Right? They're just regular people fighting their own inner battles and coming out the other side and still showing up to do good work, right? And still showing up for the people in their lives and still showing up to try to improve themselves so that they can improve their communities, right? Like, I think that has been the most influential and the most impactful for me because it reminds me, like, I can do that too.
Oh, got you. Where are some places people can find you if they are interested in following your journey?
Yeah, I would love to have you in my Instagram community. My Instagram handle is Your Mom Races Rally. Love that. Which is, I think, a hilarious joke. And I am also writing a book, so you'll be able to like get updates about that. Yeah, super exciting. So you'll get updates about that on Instagram, and then I'm hoping also to maybe have like a Substack soon and some other places that people can reach me. But Instagram is my main place. So yeah, follow along, send me a DM. Like I'd love to connect with people and just come be part of the Your Mom Races Rally community.
Well, we're part of your community, Kelly, and we're watching you, and we're so excited for your journey and to see where it takes you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. We can't wait. And when the book comes out, we'd love to have you back on.
Totally.
Oh, 100%. Yes, please.
Yeah. That would be amazing. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Kelly.
Make sure you're giving us a follow on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And we will link all of Kelly's information in the show notes. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Love you.
Love you.